Hello and welcome to Mark My Words. I'm going to do a news roundup today. I've got an article here from Property News UK saying we must stop favouring first-time buyers. Well, I think they probably have got a point. There has been a massive focus on getting people on the first rung of the ladder because for many, many years, decades and decades, there's been an assumption that first-time buyers prop the market up and then the people on the next rung and the next rung can move and that keeps the market moving and economic growth moving because the construction and property market is one of, if not the biggest industry in the UK, so it has a big effect. Now, this big focus on first-time buyers for many, many years has led to schemes like Help to Buy. Younger people, first-time buyers, can buy often flats for a smaller deposit, often 5%. But what it has meant is that they end up buying a flat that's maybe worth 160 for maybe 180 or 190 because they're paying a smaller deposit. That sort of pushes them into the deal, but in 10 years' time, they might end up selling the flat and it hasn't really gone up in value. So I'm not sure there's great benefit in that other than if people desperately want to get on the ladder and aren't as bothered about property price growth, which I'm sure lots of people are. And certainly as they get on in life, they realise sort of what is right, what isn't right, and focus more on the stuff that goes up in value. Do we need to be focusing on first-time buyers quite as much? Well, first-time buyers have become older. There are something like 9.5 million 29 to 40-year-olds across the nation, accounting for just 25% of the population above 29 and above. I think first-time buyers are more in that bracket now. I think in years gone by, they might have been in their early 20s and then they get married, but you'd get lots of 40-year-old first-time buyers now. I think it is important not to just focus on that demographic because what you're encouraging is building of lots of flats and very, very small properties, which provides more supply at that end of the market. But of course, in the next rung and the next rung up, I think there's probably more of a shortage than there is for the first-time buyers, which then creates bottlenecks in the system. When we say we built something like 200,000 properties this year and we need something like 300,000, that doesn't take into account the type and the size of the property. So I do think it's important that we break those targets down. And I don't think we have been doing that. So that's quite a big thing. You'll notice in some areas, the lower end properties, when we get into sort of bad times, as we've had maybe more of the last couple of years, the lower end properties have probably gone down more than the middle market properties because there is more supply of those. Next story is about the construction industry. This has come from Sky News. It's saying the construction industry returns to growth after months of decline. Well, I've seen lots of subbies, lots of builders, lots of main contractors go bust over the last 3 years. I would say the main reason is because materials have gone up so much. The cost of construction has gone up maybe a third on average. Lots of these builders will have been in contract and they'll have been stuck. They won't have been able to put their price up because they don't have fluctuations clauses in their contracts often. They've got a fixed price in terms of the project that they're delivering, so it does somewhat scupper them. So lots and lots have ended up going bust. According to this article, they are now growing again. The Purchasing Managers Index has now risen to just over 50, and any score above 50 represents growth in the sector. I think we've been waiting for this. I also think since Christmas, the expectation for future interest rates has come back quite a lot. Therefore, mortgage rates that people are able to obtain have been better. I think that's given the market a bit of a lift. Properties are selling again now. And because of that, I think the construction industry will benefit because they'll end up with more jobs. Construction industry, whilst not mended, is probably on the way to being mended. Okay, I've got an article here on Property Mark, which is regulating members to make sure that consumers know how to access a professional agent. And they're talking about letting agents and landlords who disregard safety and licensing laws increasingly facing action from authorities. I suppose this is not a new thing. You know, there are all these naughty landlords and naughty agents out there. I think the media quite like that narrative. I think there are a lot less of them now, to be perfectly honest. They're talking about two here that have been booted out: Key Lettings and Property Management has been expelled by the Property Ombudsman after it refused to pay £1,100 of an adjudicated award. They've obviously had something found against them and they haven't paid out on that basis. And then there's Enfield Council has prosecuted 2 agencies and a director who broke property licensing laws. I think this is probably more of a marketing advertorial for Property Mark, pretty sort of low-level stuff really. This article is about brownfield planning policy, which must promote quality homes. Earlier on I was talking about housing targets and the numbers of houses or flats that we create every year, or new dwellings. Maybe we did about 200,000 over the last year. The target is 300,000. Keir Starmer says he's going to create an even bigger target when he gets in of 1.5 million over 5 years, which is 300,000 a year. This article is talking about how we shouldn't just be focused on the overall number, but we should be focused on the types of properties being built in the right areas, which of course is true, and also quality. So they need to be pleasant to live in, good daylight, and you need to focus on the internal layout of the properties, which is true, but you know, daylight is already considered as part of the planning process. We don't need to introduce more problems and bottlenecks in the planning process. We've got plenty of those as it is. Planning officers get involved all the time in the internal layout of properties. It says it's right that local authorities should be encouraged to meet housing delivery targets, and that there should be consequences for those that fail in this duty. However, it's vital to avoid incentivising substandard developments with overly rigid rules. Well, that's true. However, housing targets are being removed because Rishi was running scared by some by-election defeats. So lots of properties have to be built to a price. People can't afford to live in Poundbury. We need the volume house builders to build stuff that people can actually afford. So whilst all this stuff is nice, as long as it's got enough daylight, as long as it meets the building regulations, I'm not sure much of this is really going to make that much difference. And I think lots of planning departments, central government, Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities and builders are going to have to ignore lots of that. And I think quite rightly too. That has been Mark Homer for Mark My Words.